Halo Infinite continues to re-envision the Halo weapon sandbox. We've already covered how weapons like the Pulse Carbine and the Heatwave deliver new gameplay experiences by combining and redefining weapons of old. And while these two weapons are neat enough on their own, they are still very much defined by the ingredients that went into them. But when we get a look at today's weapon of choice, we get a clear image of a gun that adopts an old gun and turns it into something we've never seen before. And it might just be one of the most interesting additions to Halo we've ever seen. I'm the Home Slice, Ascend.
You're too slow!
Hyperion, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a preliminary breakdown of the Shock Rifle, a new weapon in Halo Infinite that combines the already highly unique binary rifle from Halo 5 with an all-new damage type and damage mechanic: electricity. So stick around as we explore how 343 evolved another of their own creations into the Electric Thriller, and keep your ears open as I explain why the Shock Rifle may be one of the most important weapons in this game. Like always, be sure to catch my viewer question at the end, and let's get this started. The Shock Rifle has got to be one of the more functionally complex weapons in Halo Infinite thus far, and when I say complex, I don't mean it's hard to figure out, I mean it's pulling from some really niche design pools. The easiest design quirk to recognize is that the Shock Rifle is a continuous damage weapon. Now, this is actually one of the most exclusive weapon categories in Halo's 20-year history, being occupied up until this point by only 3 weapons: the Sentinel Beam, the Focus Rifle, and the Halo 5 binary rifle. At the base level, the Shock Rifle's function is actually a near mirror of the Halo 5 binary rifle, and truthfully, it's almost just a nerf of the Halo 5 binary rifle. The Shock Rifle can one-shot, so long as you land nearly all of the beam on the head of your opponent. Otherwise, it'll still melt shields and is a confident 2-shotter. It comes equipped with a zoom. It may not be a full 4 times, but it's still better than a simple smart link or otherwise. So on the surface, the Shock Rifle is basically a watered down Halo 5 binary rifle, and well, that's less impressive. Between the two, I would pick the binary rifle pretty much any day. But what closes the gap is the fact that the Shock Rifle packs an electric damage quirk. The projectile from the Shock Rifle, once it contacts players, will then chain damage onto any other enemy players within a range. Meaning that in your totally isolated fight with one guy, you can kill 2 or more. It's worth mentioning that chain damage has never appeared in a Halo FPS game like this before, and I think the more scrupulous viewers might be wondering why a trait this unique was applied to what is in many ways a half-step sniper rifle. Well, the chain also acts as a change to the sniper's ability to over-penetrate into multiple enemies. What once required a clean line of sight to do so now only needs 2 fellows to be butt-buddied up. But the electrical chaining isn't limited to just players. You can chain electricity off of weapons and equipment. Yes, you heard that right. Any collection of items on the literal floor close enough together will chain and disperse the electric bolt from the Shock Rifle. And it's right around here where I think the Shock Rifle finally gets interesting enough to tune into. The Shock Rifle can be interpreted as the first ever sniper intended for crowd control and aerial denial, if not intended for, capable of, let's say that, huh? Now, because all the item drops in Halo Infinite's arena experience are controlled by fixed weapon and equipment pads, a Shock Rifle user can fixate on a pad and prime it with electricity to punish players who have timed or who are camping the pad. Traditionally, to do this you needed an explosive, typically grenades, and grenades run out after 2 tosses. With a standard amount of Shock Rifle ammo, a player can use the included scope to hawk out the pad, zapping it whenever players get close. Now typically you're not going to get insta-kills doing this, but the shield zap the Shock Rifle puts out is strong enough to make any sweaty counting down spawns or any kid camping out rockets think twice about getting an instant pull. But what's more is that a Shock Rifle user doesn't even need to actually have a target player to deal notable damage. Any weapons on the floor become conduits for notable damage, and if you're using the Shock Rifle as a support weapon rather than as a dedicated slayer, coordination with teammates can be made to turn the dropped weapon pit into a serious death trap for cleanups and easy picks. But what sort of scares me, in sort of a good way, about the shock rifle is that it's one of the first weapons ever that is built around manipulating the environment of the fight. The shock rifle is about bridging that gap between strict player versus player damage and then Halo's more traditional but often unspoken player versus environment damage. But it's this quirk that also risks being the downfall of the weapon. Think back to what I said at the start of this video. In essence, this thing is just a watered down Halo 5 binary rifle, and while it may be cool and inventive, the chain damage quirk, whether it's between players or between players in the environment, is in many ways random. I mean, let's get real. Chances are you won't have 30 rifles sitting right beneath a guy. Chances are a dude isn't gonna just stand on top of a weapon pad. And chances are a butt buddy pair isn't gonna just sit still while you chain kill them. It's this probability, this random opportunity for cool that's going to limit the shock rifle from being cool all the time. The user has virtually no control over creating these scenarios where the chain damage would shine best. And if the gun cannot shine, it's just gonna remain dull in most instances. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't speak to this weapon's function in the BTB experience, where the chain electricity can actually stack up and eventually EMP a vehicle. If you're someone who subscribes to the Ascend Hyperion logic of Halo, then you might have already recognized this as yet another correction to the failure of the Spartan Laser, which would challenge vehicles at far range, but made the mistake of delivering insta-kills in a way that the vehicle had no way to fight back against. The shock rifle will allow you to easily challenge Banshees and Hogs, but now the fight is prolonged over the time required to EMP via chaining, meaning that the vehicle still gets the fair play of fighting back. This is what I normally call a bend in the combat loop, and something I usually remark as positive on this channel. In contrast, the Splazer generates a break in the combat loop, which I typically chalk up as negative. And, funny enough, the shock rifle and skewer really seem like the two cards that get fusion danced into the Splazer anyway, so this was probably the best solution. Jeez, where were we? I called this video a preliminary exploration of the shock rifle because this gun is gonna need time and toil to become fully realized in the sandbox. I think for now, it's a well-intentioned iteration of the binary rifle, but it may be too overly confident in its unique quirk. Because the chain electricity is going to lend itself to be far more consistently useful in BTB, there's a strong chance that the shock rifle will become and remain a BTB only weapon. That's not to say there's anything wrong with having weapons designed for certain experiences, but in my opinion, this quirk is too interesting to see live and die only in fighting Banshees. It's my hope that over the coming months, the shock rifle can develop into a weapon that's as comfortable casting zaps on 24 players as it is with just 8 players. That way, what is one of the most interesting weapons in Halo Infinite, and maybe in Halo in general, gets as much limelight as possible. This quirk will need to be developed. So for today's question, let's talk about quirk. This electricity chaining quirk, should it be limited to just the shock rifle? How else we could apply it to see it work better in arena modes for 8 players? That's gonna do it for this video. Like it if you liked it, subscribe if you have not, join me on Discord, and make sure you follow my Twitter for sure. Until next time, I'll catch y'all later.